Well, here's something else that probably shoot me over. I mean, like, they're so stuck to certain things, but then they taught Bible, but then they spit at someone who, like, with verbatim? So, like, I don't know. They're just stuck with whatever the meow meow. Like the number 33, like 33, Jesus was 33 when you go. But actually, he wasn't quite 33, precious. He was close, but it was about 35. Now they're gonna attack me real quick, but I keep saying actually, Luke was a historian of sorts. They even tried to disprove Acts. They had to literally rewrite history on more than one thing to match up with the book of Acts, just as far as the people, the places, the things, and the type of things in the environment. Just while trying to disprove it. So he is the only person that provides any figures about it. If you know anything about Herod the Great, he passed away in 4 BC. That's in March, I believe. So the early 4 BC. And the last bit of his life was spoken for trying to get some of his children killed, and also trying to make sure that they would kill enough of his servants at his funeral because he knew he was sick. So that way, someone might mourn at his funeral because Herod was nuts. Which they didn't wind up doing. But so Jesus almost certainly would have been born in 5 BC or 6 BC, but probably round about 5 BC. So, okay, so if you take 5 BC, Luke notes the year that John the Baptist baptizes him, which is his first into about 3 to 3.5 years of his journey doing the gospel stuff, his professional, I guess, ministry career. And his first ministry into Judea was identified as between, it was in the, whatever it says, the 15th year, I believe, of the second Caesar Augustus, which is Tiberius' reign. So that is literally verbatim September of 28 AD through September of 29 AD is the chunk of time that is the 15th year. They would have understood it that way, as opposed to meaning 28 AD from January to December. The comment, everything they configure about how people would have said it, but one or way or the other, you're talking about 28 AD or 29 AD, but specifically you are talking about the 15th year that the person reigned, which would have been understood at the time to mean from September of 28 AD through September of 29 AD would have been the chunk of time in which John the Baptist baptized Jesus on his first year of his ministries. So from there, there's three. So it shakes out to be round about 32 AD. That would be the trip into Jerusalem to go to the Passover festival there. That would have done him in. You can give or take one. It doesn't really matter. You could say it was 33 AD. That really would be pushing it. And 31 AD really would be too short. But that's only given within those parameters. So that's roundabout when Jesus was. And that matches up very, very well, precious, with the 490, the 77s prophecy from Daniel, right? Where if you go from Ezra, who was the scribe who went back, who had the texts, the word of God, right? And not just focused on the building of the temple, which he was, but also he was a scribe who had all that stuff. So if you go from that date, which is very specific, you have to pick the right Xerxes. You could try to say it was the other guy, and then it doesn't match at all. But in point of fact, it will shake out to be that on the 489th year would be 32 AD. And then he gets cut short in the last week, but not for his own sake. I believe his verbatim matches up with the Daniel, if you go from Ezra. So then he'll even shoot and attack me for that, because if you do the math, it's not quite as it seems. Someone born in 5 BC, when do they turn 10? 6 AD, precious, because there's no zero. It just goes from 1 BC to 1 AD. So you would have to actually track. So that means someone who turns 10 in 6 AD is 9 for part of it and 10 for part of it. So they are 30 in 26 AD. They're 29 for part of it and 30 for part of it. 27 AD, they're 30 and 31. 28, they're 31 and 32. And then 30. So all Luke says about his age was he is about 30, which he would have been 31, 32, or at latest 33 years old when he was baptized between 28 and 29 AD. Okay, because again, he was born almost certainly in 5 or 6. So how, when the description didn't say he was exactly 30, about 30, so that matches up even better to then if he was exactly 30, but then they'll try, no, 27, I did, go. We know it must be 30 or 31. They fight over everything when it's, that's not really if that were that big of a deal to them. They don't even report his last name. You ever notice? Mary, some of them they do. Magdalene, we know, right? Zebedee, John, and James was Zebedee, but you don't know about, does that matter? At any rate, this is why, why bother? They're gonna attack. Even though I'm saying, wait a minute. The only one who gives a date about it precisely when the first year of his ministry was, and we know it's basically 3 to 4, about 3 to 3.5 years. You can track how long it was in total. And at the beginning of it, he's identifying it as between 28 AD in September and 29 AD in September as the chunk of time that Jesus was, that happened with John the Baptist towards the beginning of his ministry, where he got baptized by him. So if you, you can, and they try to do everything. They even there's even nuts who no, because he was overlapping when Tiberius took over with when Augustus was still alive. When no, they can clearly prove they didn't do that once. But there's a whole subculture of people, if you try to look into it, who they're just in it to fight, and yet not once. Okay, but you wouldn't hate me if because based on Luke is a good historian and Acts is accurate, and so he gives a date. He's palling around with these people. The date he puts for the year when he was baptized, the chunk of time, is actually that. So you could lawyer it, maybe he meant 28 AD or 29 AD, but probably he meant September of 28 AD through September as the chunk of time in which this transpired, where John the Baptist baptizes Jesus. So that's all I'm saying. It's at the beginning of Luke. It's a gospel. So why are you because that shakes out to be then he would have been about 35 years old at the time of his, possibly 36. Does that change anything when the death and resurrection happened and then he ascended? Am I bad because I point that out? No. But the people do. Anyway, all right. Well, that's just anyway, fun little rant. All right, maybe I'll give you the tour one of these days. I even taped the tour. All right.